Hello, and welcome again to the Powering Progress podcast, where we look at the importance of accelerating, supporting, and exploring the careers of underrepresented talent. And we've been talking to a range of guests, leaders, people with insight around what this looks like and the work that needs to be done. So I'm really happy today to have another great guest to talk about this and share their insights and experiences. So Marvin Fihosy is a UK-based chartered accountant, risk management professional, and is currently the head of enterprise risk and assurance at prominent international law firm Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer. He's an accredited executive coach and has a diverse portfolio of other roles and community engagements. Marvin has been actively involved in community and diversity initiatives at HSF Kramer. He's contributed to the first Black History Month publication, and he's also played a key role in organising events for HSF's multiculturalism and BEN networks, including cultural activities and educational events to celebrate Black History Month. So it's great to have you here, Marvin. Welcome. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Thank you. I feel like I need some theme music. Well, that a boxer about to do my ring walk, but yeah, really good. Feeling good. Happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I know from your experiences, there's going to be so many things that our listeners can take away from today. First thing I'd like to ask you, what does powering progress of underrepresented talent mean to you?
Yeah, great question, and good to sort of lay the foundations for the conversation. Um, Honestly, like my immediate reaction is about time. I think there's opportunity, and I think there's challenge. I think the challenge is that it's kind of come too late, but obviously now is a good time. I think underrepresented talent, the talent has always been there, and the challenge is obviously making sure that talent can meet the opportunity, and hopefully we can make progress. So we're just talking about the progression of talent, and the sort of underrepresented becomes a sort of mute point. So yeah, I think it's a journey. I think it's a battle, but one I think that most organizations I've seen are waking up to and sort of proactively trying to address. So that's what it means to me.
Yeah, no, great to kind of you said to have the foundation of what this really means and what it looks like. What examples are you seeing, whether it's internally or other organizations or clients you're working with, where you are seeing progression or where you're maybe not seeing progression?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the positive. Like I mentioned, not most, a lot of the organizations I'm familiar with, including my current employers, they are, like I said, waking up to the the challenge and trying to create that opportunity meets talent sort of dynamic, trying to address it, should I say? And this comes in different forms. I'm seeing talent programs. I'm seeing partnerships with third parties who sort of excel in this area. I think a lot of organizations recognize they don't have the internal capabilities or mechanisms or whatever you want to call it, but they are partnering with organizations, professionals to try and address that initiative. So I think that's really positive. On the flip side, and sort of with my coaching hat on, and sort of in my personal space, I think one of the problems I'm also seeing are people, the talent, let's call it the talent, often almost psyching themselves out. And so from a coaching perspective, I think that presents itself as imposter syndrome. I think that's a huge barrier, but I also don't want to gaslight, the situation as, oh, the opportunities are there and people not taking it. I think that it's a very layered and quite complicated issue, but I think those are the first things that come to my mind in terms of the issues that I'm seeing.
Yeah, and as you said, there's so many layers to this and different things to unpick and
Yeah.
look at. Where do we start with all of this?
Yeah, so complicated. I guess the the opportunities have to present themselves.
Mm.
And again, I think not every organization, I think we've seen in the US, there's almost a sort of reversal. We don't need to talk about that today, but that's an example of how things outside of our control will impact and affect, I guess, the way this battle is going to go, just to continue that analogy. But I also think that there are things that people can do,
Mm,
and whether that's being able to recognize opportunities when they take themselves, maybe even trying to force opportunities, but ultimately making sure the individual is ready. Because, like I said, the talent is there. I think that's obvious.
mm.
Let's just try and do all we can to get to ourselves in, so we can position ourselves, should I say, to progress. So um, that's for me the starting point. I think the rest kind of takes care of itself over time. But again, yeah, I'm not trying to gaslight anyone. It's complicated, it's difficult. So many factors at play here.
Yeah, and one of the things we really want to shine a light on, which comes out in these conversations, that not only is it complicated and nuanced, that everyone in a way plays a role to make that change in different ways. It can't just be on the shoulders of the person navigating the careers to go out and find these opportunities or pull them out from the sky, or knock down these doors. Of course, there's going to be elements of persistence and work and capabilities are going to need, but we know that there's so much in the hands of some of the gatekeepers, the senior leaders, that the cultural environment itself
Yeah.
that needs to shift and move for those opportunities to come about as well. So it's as you say, what I think is really important, what you're saying is acknowledging where the challenge is, not staying in the challenge because we don't kind of move, but acknowledging how much work there still is to be done. And some of the organizations I've been talking with recently, there is sometimes this sense of fatigue around this, as if the job's already been done. Well, we've talked
Yeah.
about this for a few years now.
Yeah.
We've done certain initiatives, we've run certain programs, job done. And it's, as you're saying, it's, well, we're just at the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I think the challenge is also different to different
Mm,
organizations, right? So the talent that we may have been speaking about 10 years ago, 20 years ago is going to look and feel very different to the challenge that may be faced in 10 or 20 years' time. Just using technology as an obvious example. So how talent progresses and where you need the talent is going to look and feel slightly different. So yes, the fatigue it builds, and I think that's just human nature kicking in. But I think that's where, again, that's part of the battle. You need people to keep fighting the fight, but also I think the talent preparation looks and feels slightly differently, because what you may have wanted as an outcome from a talent program in the past is going to be very different. So those people that are responsible and have the power and ultimately will be held accountable need to acknowledge that this is a constantly evolving issue and a constantly evolving challenge.
yeah, definitely. And as you talk about progress, Marvin, you're someone who has navigated through a large global firm to a
Mm.
position where you're ahead of your area. So you would have seen a lot, but also I'm sure there is many things that you've had to navigate and overcome or deal with or work through to get there. Um, if you think back to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what advice would you be giving yourself that could kind of help the journey you've been on?
I think a few things, but so to touch on one of the things that's mentioned is that I don't think an individual can really force or, yeah, I guess force their own career path on one another's. It's definitely a team effort.
Mm,
I qualified at one of the big four, and I think back then a lot of the focus was on mentorship, or yeah, basically mentorship, right? So the if I simplify it, find someone who is where you think you want to be, understand what they've done, what they're good at, and almost try to mirror that, which I think is great in some instances, but I think there are natural limitations. I think as I've progressed through the working world, and yes, I've had great mentors and still have great mentors, and as someone who's now coaching, I think I see that there's a lot more to it than that, right? So when I was younger, I guess that the theme and the narrative was work hard, put your head down, your work product will speak for itself. If you're the best, you'll progress, which maybe is 80% of the story. Actually, you need a bit of sponsorship.
Mm.
You need people who have navigated particular decisions to maybe give you a bit of guidance. They may not be people that occupy in spaces that you want to occupy, but they're people who have walked the path that you're planning to walk. Um, I think, there are personal issues that you have to overcome during a career. So at the end of your career, you're a very different person and character based on your experience compared to the person who started. So you have to acknowledge that as part of your journey. So, are you having the right conversations with people in your family, your social circle? I think all of these elements combine to position you and how you show up and how you present yourself and where you're looking for these opportunities. So I think if I knew that it was going to be like a massive team effort and the composition of the team will change over time, I think that would have been helpful. But again, I think a lot of the narrative at the time was find a mentor, mirror that person, do some networking, all of that stuff, which is still valid. But the extra stuff, how do you get help with decision making? Um, what acknowledging your strengths, really think about your career plan, map that out over time. Of course, it's not linear, things will change. How do you react to those changes? Be adaptable. I don't think in those words anyway, I don't think that's what I was receiving at the time. And I think that's what I wish I would have known. So yeah, not too long ago when I was young.
Yeah. Um, that piece around kind of exploring and having that team
Mm,
around you, and it is so kind of pertinent. And it's not just having a team, as you said, it changes over time. That team, you might need some new people
yeah,
who have different insights. As you say, I've seen it myself. I'm a coach, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. I have a coach myself who's kind of
good.
helping me see things differently. And they even recently talked about, well, what's your personal boardroom look like? And that's very much to your point around
Yeah.
who do you go to kind of talk about the big decisions, and they've got different hats on and look at things in different ways, and some know you better than others. And again, it's like, how do you create that? How do you, particularly where when we're talking about underrepresented talent, and without making assumptions or casting stereotypes, what you find sometimes, those who feel they're underrepresented, who maybe don't see people like them in their organization, maybe find it more difficult to have those conversations, to venture out, to even show a vulnerable side of themselves. Kind of how do they kind of expand that network and have more of those conversations?
Yeah. So again, it's a tricky one, but again, I think if you're operating in a space where, let's just say, role models, they're not many of them, that's a challenge, right? But again, that shouldn't hinder the individual that's trying to progress. And I remember I had a coaching session not too long ago, actually, and that topic came up. So I'm like, okay, let's understand what you were looking for from that particular role model. It's like, what do you want? And can you get three people to give you different bits of advice that person that doesn't exist that will capture everything would give you? So maybe speak to someone over here, someone over here, someone over here. Maybe it's a senior manager, maybe it's a peer, maybe it's someone that hierarchically is lower ranking, but they've got a particular skill set or they've had a particular experience that you can benefit from. And the aggregation of those three conversations is what you may have ideally wanted from that one person. You still got what you need. Maybe there's a little bit more work, but again, now you're on the path to progressing, and progress is however you define it. So I think, that the growth mindset and just again, I mentioned adaptability is key because the talent is underrepresented for a reason, which means that the role models are probably going to be few and far between. But also the path that they have trodden probably going to look and feel slightly different to what we're going through. And again, when we potentially are role models to those coming up behind us, again, we need to, be cognizant of that and sort of, was it hand the ladder down or
Yeah.
whatever the terminology is. So, um, yeah, that I'm not sure if I answered your question, and that's what I think of. Yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely answer the question. And again, it kind of brings to light the responsibility on senior leaders to, as you said, pull that ladder down.
yeah,
In another of our conversations with another of our guests, they said the very same thing about, they realize, actually, now I'm in this position. um, and she saw me to start to do something. So a conversation with Paul Cleal recently, and
Yeah,
he did the same for me. So
yeah,
it's just as you say, um, the onus is on me to make that change and do something differently.
yeah, and that's why I mentioned about opportunities, right? So we're all busy people, and I think the way sort of corporate world is in any organization, people are busy, like they're shrinking headcounts or whatever. So yes, it's up to the senior leader to hand the ladder down. But I think that, again, I mentioned imposter syndrome earlier. You have junior members of staff who would want to speak to a Lanray, want to speak to a Marvin, but maybe he always looks busy. You still have to challenge yourself to try and seek that opportunity, schedule that meeting, have that conversation. That's the other half of the puzzle as well, because you're obviously willing and I'm willing. I may not know that you need the help. You need to be able to flag, I'd like to have that conversation. I'd like to talk to you about it. So I think that's really an important part. So back to the first question, the relationship building and, the network building, that's really important.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. You're an executive coach. How do you feel that? Because traditionally, executive coaching has kind of been kept just for top execs, because for some reason people thought that, well, they're the ones that need it. Um, how can exposure to coaching really impact the progression of underrepresented talent?
Yeah, I think it's not spoken about enough, actually. It's almost like a hidden gem. Again, I think you have different points in your career path and different hurdles you have to overcome at particular points in the journey. And what you actually need in that instance, what I would recommend, obviously, is a coach, right? So you understand there's an issue, and the objective of the coaching session will be to try and figure out how am I going to get past that particular hurdle. Am I in my head? Um, is there something outside of my control? How do I show up? Can we do a bit of sort of role play or whatever the case may be? Are there coaching models that you can use? I think it's as important for junior members or people at the earlier stages of their career as it is people who have made it. Um, Again, I've seen some of the programs that impact and influence courses, talent programs. They are weaving in coaching. I think that's being acknowledged. That's a really key part of the journey. Again, I said it again, imposter syndrome kicks in all the time. Can we have a coaching session about how I'm going to show up to that appraisal meeting and vocalize my ambition? Do I understand my personal strengths and my goals? What are my timelines? All of these sorts of things I don't think necessarily exist in a traditional mentoring relationship. And also, sometimes you might want to speak to someone that doesn't have those close ties, and you just want to speak to that independent person. Again, that's really important. So, yes, it's been hogged by the executives in the past, but from what I've seen, that's changing. I do think the masses probably need to know a bit more about the power and the possibilities through having a good coach.
Yeah, definitely. And what can an individual who maybe wants this do, or what should kind of organizations be doing to make it more available for individuals like that?
Again, I mentioned partnership, right? So I think in my current firm, I think this is a really positive. We have a coaching faculty. So there are coaches within the firm available to individuals. But again, depending on the problem, you might not want to be coached by someone that's within the firm. So there are partnership programs that exist. Maybe there's a location specific coaching program. I think you kind of need to do the work. If you know coaching exists, I think you'll probably be able to find a coach. I think the problem I was mentioning before is that most people don't really know what coaching is.
Yeah.
You hear coach and you think of sports predominantly, but there are career coaches, transformational coaches, whatever the problem, there's probably someone who can help you. I think organizations need to, number one, know that. Number two, know who they can partner with and just make that an option for employees who are seeking to progress within their firm. And like I said, the talent's always been there. So if you're not going to give that to your talent, someone else will. It's kind of in your best interest to look after your people and nurture the talent.
Yeah, definitely. And from some of the programs I've done around coaching and underrepresented talent, um, I agree that the value that the individual gets, but then how's that actually benefits the organization is so important. Because sometimes what you see is an individual, like you mentioned, maybe they're struggling with imposter syndrome or lack of confidence, or something's blocking them because
Yeah,
they're just seeing their environment or their position in a certain way. And through coaching, all of a sudden, they see a different perspective. And that can really empower them to take that next step or make that decision, and whatever it might be. Because as you said, every situation is different.
yeah,
And again, we don't want to go down the gaslighting route of it's all on you.
yeah,
But there are times when there is an option you can take that may make an impact, maybe not right now, today, but can really be a catalyst for changing your career. But because you can't see it, you're not going to do it, or you're worried, or whatever it might be. And it could be sometimes that coaching is that support you need to say, okay, I'm ready. Actually, I've got the skills. It is my time, or I can get that connection with that person I haven't spoken to. And then little by little, they go on. So I believe that empowerment and confidence
yeah.
is so key around this.
Clarity is also important, right? So
Mm,
I'm sure you've experienced this. You have a coach when you want to talk about, okay, this is my problem, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And actually you unpick it through whatever model, whatever conversation you're about to have.
mhm,
And there's a moment where you realize, well, maybe this isn't what I want, or it's not quite what I want. So if you walk away with that clarity, okay, I was seeking that promotion because I think the job title and the extra responsibility is going to satisfy me.
mm,
But actually, maybe it's something slightly different, or maybe it's a secondment. So again, I think if you're having that conversation, you're working through the motions with someone, helping you, someone that's on your team that we referenced before. And so when you're having that conversation with your senior manager or your manager, you're quite clear about what you want. And again, I just think it makes a conversation a little bit easier. Not to say you're going to get what you want, but at least you know what you're asking for. Got a lot of people out there don't,
mm,
fortunately. So yeah, it's really important. I think also the feeling of knowing you've been invested into. So it's not, I'm going to send you on a course to get this accreditation or this degree, which again is helpful in some spaces, but not all the time if it's not going to help you to progress your career. It's just another certificate you've got.
mm.
So yeah, I just think the structure and the support is really important for organizations and the individuals within those organizations.
Yeah, definitely. And I really kind of feel that that sense of clarity and purpose is something that really helps to accelerate progress,
Yeah.
and then builds belief in you because you know where you're going. And even if you
Mhm.
get knockbacks or there are roadblocks, which there will be, I don't think any of us have got to where we are without challenges or issues, but that can be your North Star, if you like, to guide you forward.
Yeah, of course, the journey never, well, it doesn't for some people, but it's an ongoing journey. There are
Mm,
different things you need at different point. So again, I think just acknowledging that in the first instance is really key. You listen to or watch YouTube videos or keynote speakers of really senior leaders, and they'll tell you, "Oh, I was in department X and something happened. I moved to department Y, and then I was transferred to this country, and then I got made redundant, and I launched this venture." And they've all got their different stories. Very rarely are they linear. Like, I joined this company at 18 or 20 when I graduated, and climbed the career ladder, and now I'm here. So I think it's also realizing that your career path is not linear. There are going to be twists and turns, there are going to be challenges, obstacles. As long as you overcome them and you're learning from them, at some point that's going to be part of your story that you're then telling to people and younger versions of yourself.
mm,
And that's really important, just to zoom in and see both the micro and the macro elements
mm.
of the story.
Yeah, definitely. And other things really interested to get your thoughts on. You work in the legal world, and I do a lot of law firm work with law firms as well. So you understand and see some of the barriers within a particular profession, particular industry. There will be some themes, just like with any other industry. Um, what impact does how the wider industrial profession is? What impact does that have on an individual? Because yes, we're talking about some of the micro things maybe within your organization or firm, but yeah, when there are things that are based on the wider professional industry, kind of, yeah, what action might be needed?
That that's a big one, especially in the legal industry. So I was made aware a few years ago of what's now called the 1% study, which was the conclusion of an exercise. But to sort of summarize and simplify, of the major UK law firms, I think there are like 13,000 partners, of which 90 um, identified as black. So that's actually less than 1%, but they rounded
Mhm.
up to 1%. So again, the challenges are, and the structure of the industry will dictate the frequency and the number of opportunities for those wanting to become a partner. So I don't sit here and say it's impossible, but we would be foolish if we didn't say it was difficult. And that can be outside of the control of any one law firm. So if one law firm's like, I'm going to tackle this, I'm going to have all black partners, that percentage is still not going to be shooting up. So I think that's important to acknowledge. Um, but again, maybe again, the career path's not linear, right? So you join a law firm and maybe you think you want to become partner and opportunities present themselves and you realize actually maybe I want to start something of my own. I think as long as you are not being defeated by the obstacle, that's great for the individual. Your question though was how does the industry impact the opportunities? Massively. And, unfortunately, law firms haven't solved that problem. Um, Hopefully over time we get closer to all seeing what the solution actually was. Maybe you need to move country.
Mm,
Uh, I don't know. There are different solutions, but I think as long as you as an individual are progressing and you're not going to let certain things stop you, I think that's probably the most important part.
mm. Yeah, and there is something around understanding what you can and can't control, but and acknowledging, and I'd say even this is something for senior leaders as well to really be aware of. And I'm sure many are, but maybe some aren't. You're not always as aware. And some of the conversations I had, it sometimes makes you realize that you're still not seeing this, that the systemic barriers that are still in play, and how it leads to some of the statistics that you talk about, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. And yeah, it shows the importance of this conversation because there is a lot of work still to be done.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you took the words out of my mouth. The importance of the conversation can't be overplayed enough because I think what's happened historically is you have that underrepresented talent and it's sort of in their mind anyway, they're knocking on the door and they're ready, and then they just get worn out, dejected, and they go elsewhere and they progress. And then a company doesn't even have to be a law firm, but a company is, oh, we lost that talent. Why didn't we know they wanted to become senior manager? They have been working hard, but I thought they were happy here, or something along those lines. So I think having these programs and having those conversations and raising awareness is really important. It then is on the sort of managers to senior leaders to then act on that. So you've got this top talent here.
Mm,
They want to progress. Maybe it doesn't happen today, but can we create a pathway for it to happen tomorrow? If not, they will leave. So it's an important issue to address, but the conversation facilitates that dialogue, and that
yeah.
probably wasn't happening years and years and years ago.
Yeah, definitely. So let's say you're in a room full of kind of fellow leaders, and we can keep our sort of law hats on. You've got some partners in the room, and they're key to some of the decisions being made. Industry. Let's put some industry kind of leaders in there as well. What would you be kind of advising them to be focusing on to support underrepresented talent?
Number one, do you actually recognize your talent? Do you know where this talent is lurking, and are they in positions to thrive ultimately? Do we have the right support system around them? So is it mentors? Is it sponsors? Are they aware of where the opportunities lie? So again, progress doesn't necessarily mean pay rises and new job titles. It's an important part, but that's not the be all and end all. So if I'm a senior manager, what can I do to enrich the working life of my top talent? And am I prepared to invest, or do I just need to continually recruit when my best talent ups and leaves and goes to somewhere where they feel more welcome and feel invested in, I would say you need to know who your talent is and what they want,
Mm,
whether that's through appraisal conversations, talent programs, just making managers better at having those career conversations. There's so many little things you can do. Um, Again, you can't please everyone. That's fine. Business models, I think, sort of factor that in, but the people you would want to keep, give yourself the best opportunity of keeping them. And again, the dialogue is really important. So yeah, it's again not easy. It's easy to say, right? If you have 10,000 employees, that's quite a big task. But again, if it means enough to you, you will do that.
yeah. What I love about that is that you start with a question, so already you're coming in coaching. Um, that shows that they need coaching too, maybe sometimes in a different way, but
But
leaders need coaching around how they create a more inclusive environment, don't they?
yeah, I think also like the accountability is important, right? So if you are a CEO or really top person, in fact, it doesn't even have to be CEO. It could be a head of a particular department, right? And rightly or wrongly, you assume, oh, HR, they manage that, or it's someone else's responsibility. If I was in the room of those senior leaders, I would say, okay, what accountability do you
Mm,
hold? Because if you're supposed to be driving strategy, innovation, or whatever, and again, you don't know where your talent lies, you don't know where to look for ideas, you don't know where to look for efficiency, leadership, for example, then definitely part of the problem.
mm,
HR can't solve all of that. They're not in the day to day, so you have to have some accountability. And if you can't answer the first question I asked, which is where does your talent lie, that's probably a good starting point.
yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, need for some reflection, definitely
Hundred
for
percent.
people to kind of ensure that we're going in the right direction here, and I'm ready to take on the work. So what do you do? Yeah, I hear that. Answer the question. What do you do once you have the answer as well? Are you prepared to follow up once you've given yourself an honest answer?
Again, how much does it mean to you? Do
Mm,
you want to lose your top talent to your competition? Probably not. So if that's not motivation, I don't know what is.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, no,
it's complicated.
yeah.
Yes.
And there are so many. One of the things that I personally love about having these conversations is that there are so many different things to unravel, and so many different ways. This is not about having, and it's funny actually, with one of the law firms I did some work with, a partner did actually ask, "Do you have like a guidebook that we could follow?"
Mm,
So I won't make any lawyer jokes. I love all my lawyers, but it sometimes, obviously, if we had the president before and can follow it, of course, great. But we know it's not going to work like that, and it's going to be different for one organization, different for one industry, one profession, different from one individual to another, which it takes real time
100%.
to really kind of dig in what's going to help. And even sometimes when we just say underrepresented talent, what does that mean? We have to go deeper to the individual and say, okay,
Mm,
what does this look like for you? And what's the right level of support that you need? What challenge, you talked about support and challenge earlier, how much challenge do you need to kind of make as well? And then give the mentorship, the sponsorship, all of those things, which even talking about it sounds hard work and time,
it's
but
difficult, but I think
it is.
if you have an objective, like I said, the path, there will be things that you have not anticipated.
Mm,
There's always the known unknown. But if you have the objective, which is to help your talent thrive,
mm,
represented or underrepresented, I just think it's just good business practice, right? So
yeah,
you've hired this talent for a reason. Give them the workplace, the environment, the support, the structure to be able to do what you've hired them to do. Like I said, if you don't, somebody else will. Just guaranteed. And it's new territory for most managers, for most organizations, but that doesn't mean you shy away from the challenge. It's just part of the job, I think, of a senior leader.
yeah, definitely. There's so many great things here, Marvin, that I'm sure people listening in will think, oh, actually, there's something that I can do. And that's the whole point of these conversations, to get people thinking, what else can I do? What needs to be
Yeah.
done differently? What role can I play? And I'm sure just by hearing some of your experiences and insights, they'll do that. We are coming close to time, but one last thing I'd love to hear from you on is, what does powering progress look like for you personally over the coming months or in the future? What does powering progress look like for Marvin?
Um, Again, I mean, I'm still I'm still trying to progress myself. So again, having those conversations, being clear about what I want, where those opportunities may present themselves. Again, easy to say. There may be something that looks and feels like an opportunity. It may not serve me um, right now. Having a conversation with your team, um, this is what I'm thinking of. Having that conversation with your coach, this is the problem I'm trying to overcome. So at an individual level, that's what I will be doing. As a coach, that's what I'll be challenging my clients to do. Where do you see yourself in 3, 4, 5 years time? And what's the first step on that journey to get you there? Maybe once you've taken that first step and you've accomplished that mini goal, maybe you think the destination is something slightly different. But let's stop the procrastination. And again, I'm not saying everyone procrastinates, but let's take that step. Let's be proactive, let's be active, and see where that gets us. At an organizational level, find some coaches within your organization, give them a mission. If not, speak to Lanre, speak to Marvin. Like, let's just try and solve this original battle that I mentioned. Let's make the talent meet the opportunity. So I think there are different levels and different layers, but I think everyone has a next step that they can take. So let's do that.
Yeah, great. I love that. I love that strap line as well. Let the talent meet the opportunity.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Well, Marvin, thank you so much for your time and your insights. And I'm sure so many people would have benefited from listening. We have come to the end of today's episode. So yeah, thank you very much. And to everyone else listening, we'll connect with you soon. In the meantime, keep powering your progress. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Thanks, Lanre.